Hey guys, tonight we're diving into a bedtime story from Greek mythology, but not the polished version you skimmed in a textbook. This is the darker cut, the one where a father swallows his own children whole, where blood spilled on the earth gives birth to monsters, and where every so-called lullaby comes wrapped in nightmare. It's history told like a fever dream, half legend, half horror meant to keep you listening as you drift towards sleep. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. I love seeing how far this sleepy little time machine reaches. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It begins in a silence so deep it almost feels violent. No stars, no sky, no ground beneath your feet, just a crushing absence the Greeks named chaos. Imagine drifting there, weightless, but not peaceful. It's the kind of silence that makes your skin crawl, like being stuck in a room where even your own heartbeat sounds too loud. From that void, the first figure stirs Gaia, the earth herself. She doesn't arrive with trumpets or sunshine, she just is solid, heavy, fertile, rising up like a body through black water, and she's lonely. So the sky forms above her Uranus, vast and endless, stretching across her like a suffocating blanket. Together, they start to create. At first it seems hopeful. Out of chaos. There's now order, earth and sky. But the children they bring into the world, they're not the cute, golden-haired babies of storybooks. They're wrong. The Cyclopes, each with a single blazing eye. The Hecatonchires, with 100 grasping arms and 50 screaming heads. Try to picture that not poetically. Not as some symbol, literally 50 faces stacked onto one body, shrieking in a chorus that never stops. That's the cradle of creation. And here's where the family drama motif starts, the part the Greeks never sugar-coated. Uranus, the proud father, takes one look at his kids and decides, nope, too strange, too dangerous, too embarrassing to show off at divine PTA meetings. So what does he do? He forces them down, back into the earth, back into Gaia herself. He shoves them into Tartarus, a pit so deep and black, it makes chaos feel cozy by comparison. Now pause for a second. Imagine being Gaia in that moment. Not just a mother watching her children locked away, but a mother feeling every twist, every scream inside her own body. She is the earth, and her children are literally trapped beneath her skin. Their cries vibrate through her bones. Their fists pound against her ribs. Every movement is agony, and Gaia begins to ache. That ache turns into rage. Have you ever clenched your jaw so tight you felt your teeth might crack? Multiply that by eternity. That's what she feels. Meanwhile, Uranus struts across the heavens, pleased with himself. From the ground, he must have looked perfect, a spotless sky. Calm, eternal. But beneath that surface inside Gaia, there's a prison full of screaming monsters, and a mother slowly plotting revenge. This is the real Greek creation story, not sunshine and rainbows, but a toxic household from the start. Forget awkward family dinners or passive-aggressive text messages from your parents. This is the most dysfunctional family in the universe. Gaia, seething in silence, begins to craft a weapon. From the hardest stone, she shapes a sickle, its edge glinting sharp enough to slice through the very fabric of the sky. She hides it, waits, and whispers to her children. Who will avenge me, she asks. But the Titans hesitate. Who dares to strike their father, the endless sky himself, one by one? They shrink back, all except the youngest, Kronos, ambitious, bold, hungry. He takes the sickle into his hands, and in that moment the balance of the cosmos shifts. Gaia exhales for the first time in ages. The trap is set. The sky has no idea. Night falls, and with it comes routine. Uranus descends as he always does, stretching across Gaia, pressing her down beneath his endless weight. For ages this ritual has gone on sky-smothering earth, silence covering screams. But tonight, something waits in the shadows. Kronos lies hidden, the sickle cold and heavy in his grip. Picture a son crouched in his mother's darkness, teeth bared, heart thundering, He's not heroic. He's not noble. He's desperate. Ambition burns hotter than fear. This isn't about justice. It's about power. And when Uranus leans close, Kronos strikes. The blade flashes. The cut is merciless. The scream that follows rips across the universe, echoing like thunder that never fades. The sky himself bleeds, and the earth drinks it in. From those drops of blood spring new horrors, the giants, towering and violent, the furies, winged spirits of vengeance shrieking for justice. And from the foam of the sea, stirred by what was severed, rises Aphrodite, goddess of love, born not from tenderness, but mutilation, a cosmic joke. Beauty pulled out of carnage. This is creation, Greek style, messy, violent. No one gets a happy family photo at the end of it. Uranus reels back, defeated, and Kronos stands tall for the first time. The young Titan has done the unthinkable. He's overthrown the sky. He takes his place as ruler, declaring a new age. The Titans rise, the world reshaped under Kronos' hand, and for a while, it seems like the pain might be over. The prison is opened. The cries of the trapped children fade. Gaia breathes a little easier. Kronos sits on the throne, confident, triumphant. But here's the curse of this family power doesn't soothe paranoia, it feeds it. Because Uranus, broken but not silent, leaves behind a prophecy. His last words echo in Kronos' mind: as I have been overthrown, so too shall you be, by your own child. That's the thing about Greek myths, they never let you rest. The wheel of betrayal keeps turning. The father who kills the father fears being killed by the son. And Kronos, he takes that fear to its logical, horrifying extreme. He marries his sister Rhea, one by one. Their children are born Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, and one by one, before they can even cry, before their eyes can even open, Kronos gulps down child after child, each swallow echoing like thunder in his gut. To him, it's not cruelty, it's insurance. That's not parenting, that's meal prep with a side of paranoia. But what he doesn't know, what he can't taste, is that one child will slip past his teeth. One son hidden away, cradled in secret, waiting to grow strong enough to crack this family curse wide open. And that child's name is Zeus. Gaia doesn't heal, even after Uranus is cut down, even after Kronos raises his bloody sickle in triumph. The pain lingers. Because what Uranus did to her, the burying, the smothering, the endless weight of her children trapped inside, wasn't just cruelty. It was torture carved into her body. Picture her, the earth groaning under the pressure of a prison she never wanted to carry. Every shift in her soil a cry. Every tremor a reminder that her children are still down there, clawing at the walls of Tartarus. She's both jailer and victim, and that contradiction eats away at her like acid, and Uranus the sky still hovers above, wounded but smug. He looks down at Gaia, the woman who bore his children, and he sees not a partner but a vessel. His love is control, his embrace is suffocation. This isn't some wholesome cosmic romance, it's a toxic marriage played out on a universal stage. Forget the Hallmark Channel, this is reality TV with knives. The worst part, Gaia knows she needs him, or at least, she needs his downfall. Her rage isn't just personal, it's maternal. She can feel every cry from her children in Tartarus echoing like muffled screams in her chest. Imagine carrying that, night after night, knowing the one person who could free them is the same one who locked them away. So she turns to her children, the Titans, and whispers her pain like poison in their ears. She doesn't plead, she doesn't beg, she seeds resentment, lets it grow like weeds in the cracks of loyalty. One by one, they feel the weight of their father's tyranny pressing on them too. But none of them move, not yet. The fear of Uranus is too great. He is the sky, after all endless, ever-present, impossible to escape. Standing against him feels like standing against reality itself. Except Kronos, the youngest, the boldest, the one who doesn't flinch when his mother hands him the blade. Gaia doesn't smile when he takes it. There's no joy in this, just grim necessity. She knows what it costs to betray blood, to pit child against father, but she also knows what it costs to do nothing. Her womb is a tomb, her body a battlefield. She's been patient long enough, and so she blesses Kronos with silence. She lets him crouch in the shadows of her body, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And when Uranus descends again, heavy and smug, Gaia doesn't move. She lets it happen, knowing the balance of the universe is about to shift in the most violent way possible. The curse clings to Kronos like sweat. Every time he closes his eyes, he hears it, "You will fall to your own child." It echoes louder than the cheers of his siblings, louder than the whispers of power. Fear becomes his shadow. So when Rhea gives birth to their first child, a daughter, Kronos doesn't see a baby. He sees a threat, tiny, helpless, wrapped in cloth and yet in his mind. She already carries the knife that will cut him down, so he does the unthinkable. He opens his mouth and swallows her whole. It's quick, too quick. No cradle songs, no tears, no goodbyes. One gulp, and she's gone. And in that twisted stomach of his, she remains alive, trapped in darkness. Rhea weeps, but Kronos doesn't flinch. He tells himself it's necessary, preventative care. Like a man terrified of sickness popping pills he doesn't need. Only this isn't vitamins, it's his children. The second child comes, and Kronos swallows again, then the third, and the fourth, and the fifth. One by one. Each newborn slides past his teeth, silenced before they can even cry. Imagine the sound. Not a scream, not a struggle, just the wet, echoing gulp of a father turning his legacy into a prison. If you're picturing the world's most disturbing diet plan, you're not far off. This is the original clean-eating, Titan style. A god's version of intermittent fasting, except it's his family on the menu. And here's the cruelest part: the children don't die. They're alive in there, conscious, growing in the dark. Think about that the next time you can't sleep. 5 immortal siblings curled together in the pit of their father's stomach, waiting, stewing, dreaming of freedom. Rhea watches this cycle repeat and repeats, her grief sharpening into rage. She carried them, she bore them, and now she's forced to watch them vanish into a maw of paranoia. She's married to a god, but she lives with a monster, and Kronos. He sleeps easier each night, telling himself he's safe, that the prophecy can't touch him, but fear never really leaves. It clings to him, coiled tight inside, even as his belly swells with the weight of the children he tried to erase. The family is broken, the mother grieving, the father devouring, the children silenced. The universe groans with it. And yet even here, in this nightmare, hope hasn't completely died. By the time her 6th child is on the way, Rhea has had enough. She's carried 5 babies, watched each one disappear down Kronos' throat like offerings to fear itself, and now, swollen with life again, she knows if she does nothing, this child will meet the same fate, so she makes a choice, a desperate, dangerous choice. When the baby's born, she doesn't hand him over. Instead, she steals away into the night, clutching the tiny, crying bundle to her chest. Every step feels like treason, every shadow like the hand of her husband reaching to snatch the child away. She travels to Crete, to a cave hidden deep in the mountains. There, she hides her son. She names him Zeus. And for the first time in this cursed cycle, a spark of defiance flickers in the dark. To cover her tracks, she swaddles a stone in cloth smooth, cold, silent. She carries it back to Kronos, her face steady though her heart races. When she presents the bundle, Kronos doesn't even look. He just swallows, the stone dropping into his gut with the rest of his children. He sighs, satisfied, convinced he's safe. But he isn't, because far away, in that cave, Zeus is fed in secret. He's cradled by nymphs, his cries drowned out by the clash of cymbals and drums so his father can't hear. He drinks the milk of the goat Amalthea, grows strong on wild honey, and learns the sky is not invincible. Every day he grows, Rhea's gamble pays off. She's risked everything: her marriage, her life, her sanity, to smuggle hope into the world. She knows it's not over, not by a long shot. But for the first time, there's a chance. and Kronos. He sleeps on, bloated and smug, believing he's beaten fate. He has no idea the prophecy he feared is alive, crawling, learning to walk, learning to wield rage like a weapon. This is how revolutions begin, not with thunder, but with a mother's lie. Zeus has escaped his father's belly, but to overthrow him, to end the nightmare, he'll have to spark a war that lasts longer than your lifetime, longer than your children's children could count. A war that will set the world on fire for 10 endless years. The years pass, and Zeus grows into the kind of man his father should have feared. Tall, sharp-eyed, carrying the storm in his fists. When he's ready, he doesn't sneak into Kronos' house in the dead of night with a dagger. No, he kicks down the door. He forces Kronos to vomit up his siblings one by one, slick and gasping, alive after years trapped in darkness. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, all reborn in the world, furious, hungry for revenge, a family reunion, except the setting is vengeance, not birthday cake, and then comes war. The Titans rally behind Kronos, massive and ancient, their steps shaking the ground. Zeus leads his freed siblings, the Olympians, younger but driven, their rage boiling hotter than Kronos' fear. For 10 years, the sky is nothing but fire and ash. Mountains crumble as brothers hurl them like baseballs across the battlefield. Oceans rise and crash as Poseidon swings his trident. The earth splits, rivers boil, and the air itself tastes like iron. The clash of immortal against immortal drowns out the cries of mortals, who can do nothing but watch their world ripped apart overhead. And then Zeus remembers something the others had forgotten. Deep in Tartarus, locked away by Uranus himself, lie the Cyclops, the one-eyed Smiths, and the Hecatonchires, the hundred-handed giants. Monsters to some, but to Zeus, they're the ace up his sleeve. He breaks open their prison. Out crawl the Cyclops, eyes blazing, chains still clattering, ready to serve anyone who'll set them free. They gift Zeus his thunderbolt, Poseidon his trident, Hades a helmet of invisibility, weapons forged out of the universe's bones. And when the Hecatonchires rise, the battlefield tilts. Picture it creatures with 100 arms, hurling boulders the size of islands, flinging them like pebbles. The Titans suddenly don't look so invincible. The war grows louder, darker. The air is thick with smoke, the ground littered with broken mountains. Even time seems to stagger. 10 years blur together, 10 endless years of fathers against sons, brothers against brothers, the world shaking with every strike. This isn't just a fight for power. It's the universe ripping itself apart to decide whose dysfunction gets to sit on the throne. The years pass, and Zeus grows into the kind of man his father should have feared. Tall, sharp-eyed, carrying the storm in his fists. When he's ready, he doesn't sneak into Kronos' house in the dead of night with a dagger. No, he kicks down the door. He forces Kronos to vomit up his siblings one by one, slick and gasping, alive after years trapped in darkness. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, all reborn in the world, furious, hungry for revenge, a family reunion, except the setting is vengeance, not birthday cake. And then comes war. The Titans rally behind Kronos, massive and ancient, their steps shaking the ground. Zeus leads his freed siblings, the Olympians, younger but driven, their rage boiling hotter than Kronos' fear. For 10 years, the sky is nothing but fire and ash. Mountains crumble as brothers hurl them like baseballs across the battlefield. Oceans rise and crash as Poseidon swings his trident. The earth splits, rivers boil, and the air itself tastes like iron. The clash of immortal against immortal drowns out the cries of mortals, who can do nothing but watch their world ripped apart overhead. And then Zeus remembers something the others had forgotten. Deep in Tartarus, locked away by Uranus himself, lie the Cyclops, the one-eyed Smiths, and the Hecatonchires, the hundred-handed giants. Monsters to some, but to Zeus, they're the ace up his sleeve. He breaks open their prison. Out crawl the Cyclops, eyes blazing, chains still clattering, ready to serve anyone who'll set them free. They gift Zeus his thunderbolt, Poseidon his trident, Hades a helmet of invisibility, weapons forged out of the universe's bones, and when the Hecatonchires rise, the battlefield tilts. Picture it creatures with 100 arms, hurling boulders the size of islands, flinging them like pebbles. The Titans suddenly don't look so invincible. The war grows louder, darker. The air is thick with smoke, the ground littered with broken mountains. Even time seems to stagger. 10 years blur together. 10 endless years of fathers against sons, brothers against brothers, the world shaking with every strike. This isn't just a fight for power. It's the universe ripping itself apart to decide whose dysfunction gets to sit on the throne. In the end, chaos only lasts so long before somebody finally tips the scale. For the Olympians, the turning point comes when the Cyclops finish their masterpieces: Zeus's thunderbolt, Poseidon's trident, Hades' helmet. These aren't just weapons, they're symbols, the kind of cosmic swag that screams, "We're done playing fair." Zeus hurls a bolt that doesn't just strike at blinds. Mountains shatter into dust, seas boil, the air itself burns. Poseidon drives his trident into the earth and cracks it open like an egg, rivers spilling into black holes. And Hades slips into invisibility, moving through the battlefield like a nightmare in the corner of your eye. Titans start to fall, one after another, their booming voices silenced under rubble and ash. Kronos fights the hardest. The old tyrant swings his sickle, every blow meant to slice history back into his favor. But for the first time, fear grips him because the prophecy he swallowed his children to avoid is staring him right in the face, eyes lit with stormfire. Zeus doesn't hesitate. He brings the thunder down on his father, strike after strike until Kronos crumbles. The Titans are dragged, defeated, down into Tartarus, the same prison where Uranus once shoved his children. Poetic justice, or just another turn of the wheel. Either way, the cage door slams shut. The 100-handed giants now the wardens instead of the prisoners. But not all Titans get the same sentence. Atlas, who fought with unshaken defiance, is singled out. His punishment to stand at the edge of the world and hold the sky on his shoulders forever. Not a week, not a century, forever. Imagine that you're back aching, your knees shaking, and not even death as a way out. Atlas becomes the universe's most tragic personal trainer, cursed with a workout that never ends. For the Olympians, it's victory. For the world, it's a reset button. The smoke clears, the earth steadies, and a new order rises. Zeus sits on the throne of the cosmos, lightning always at his side, the king of gods at last. But here's the thing. Victory never erases fear. Kronos learned that, and now it's Zeus's turn. The war is over, the smoke clears, and Olympus finally stands tall. Marble thrones, feasts, music echoing through the halls of a mountain that scrapes the sky. Zeus sits at the center, thunderbolt in hand, his siblings gathered around him like a brand new government sworn in after a bloody coup. From the outside, it looks perfect, a clean slate. A new golden age. The Titans are locked away. Atlas groans under the weight of the heavens, and Kronos is nothing but a shadow in Tartarus. The cycle of betrayal should be broken, but Zeus knows better, because he's heard the prophecy too. He watched his father twist in paranoia, choking down his own children just to keep it at bay, and deep inside, he knows fate doesn't skip generations. So even as the wine flows and Olympus laughs, Zeus's grip tightens on his thunderbolt. Every glance from a sibling feels loaded. Every whisper in the hall sounds like conspiracy. His throne is solid marble, but to him it feels like quicksand. The truth is, the war may be won, but the fear isn't gone. If Kronos could fall, if Uranus could fall, then Zeus knows one day he could too. The new order is born. But the wheel of betrayal never stops turning. And even the king of gods can't escape the sound of prophecy ticking in the back of his skull. While Zeus is busy polishing his throne and side-eyeing every sibling like they might steal it out from under him, someone else is thinking about a different problem altogether. Not power, not prophecy people. Prometheus, the titan who somehow dodged Tartarus, decides the world is too empty. The earth is here, the sky is here. The gods are throwing parties on Olympus, but who's left to admire it all? So he shapes humankind out of clay, careful and patient, like a potter spinning something fragile on a wheel. The forms are delicate at first, brittle, But Prometheus breathes into them, gives them movement, curiosity, hunger, and suddenly the world isn't just rocks and storms. It has us. Of course, Zeus isn't thrilled. To him, mortals are an afterthought, a toy. He expects them to worship, to obey, to stay small. But Prometheus, he believes they deserve more. Fire, for instance. The spark of survival. The power to cook food, to forge weapons, to keep the darkness at bay. So Prometheus plays the oldest card in the family deck. He cheats. He tricks Zeus at a feast, hiding the best portions of a sacrifice under scraps, giving humans the juicy cuts and the gods the leftovers. When Zeus catches on, he's furious. He slams the door on fire, locking it away so mortals shiver in the cold. But Prometheus won't stop. He sneaks up to Olympus, steals a flame, and carries it back down hidden in a stalk of fennel. Fire flickers to life in human hands, smoke rising into the sky, proof of rebellion curling above the trees, and Zeus. He doesn't laugh this off. He doesn't shrug. He makes an example out of Prometheus. The Titan is dragged to the Caucasus Mountains, chains biting into his wrists, his ankles hammered into the stone. And then comes the worst part. Every morning, an eagle swoops down its wings black against the dawn and tears into his side. You hear it, the wet rip of flesh, the screech of hunger, the gnash of a beak digging deep. His liver is devoured or is raw and bloody until there's nothing left. But Prometheus can't die. By nightfall, his body heals, and by morning, the eagle comes again, over and over. You can almost hear it yourself, the tearing, the screaming, the endless cycle. That's his punishment, not just pain, but knowing it's coming back tomorrow, for giving humans fire, for daring to believe they deserved more than scraps. You're there with him, not chained, not bleeding, but close enough that you can't look away. The wind bites your face on that mountain ledge, thin and sharp, carrying the smell of iron and rot. The sky is endless, but all you can hear is the beating of wings. Then it lands. The eagle's shadow crawls across the stone before you see its body, feathers bristling black as night. Its talons scrape the rock metal on metal, nails on glass, and your stomach knots before it even opens its beak. And then you hear it. The sound no human ear was meant to know, a wet, tearing rip, like fabric shredded underwater, except this isn't cloth, it's flesh. Prometheus thrashes, chains rattling, teeth clenched, his scream bouncing off the cliffs until it feels like the whole mountain is crying. You want to turn away, but you can't. The eagle digs deeper, gorging itself on a feast that renews every day. The air fills with the copper tang of blood, so heavy it sticks in your throat. You gag, but Prometheus only roars louder, rage and agony twisted together. And when the bird finally lifts off, its belly swollen, its wings dripping red, you think it's over. But it isn't, because you know he knows that by morning. It all starts again. Imagine lying in bed, hearing the scratch of talons every dawn, knowing that your torment is eternal, that your body will heal only so you can suffer again. No sleep, no mercy, just the rhythm of pain, like clockwork, forever. This is what rebellion costs. Not death, but endless life in pieces. Zeus isn't satisfied with chaining Prometheus. Punishing the rebel is one thing, but punishing the humans, the ones who dared to benefit from him, that's where the real satisfaction lies. So he crafts a trap, not a thunderbolt, not a flood, something subtler, something beautiful. He orders Hephaestus, the lame smith, to sculpt a woman from clay. Perfect face, perfect form, flawless hands that look too delicate to ever cause harm. The gods gather around like artists signing their work. Athena gives her wisdom, Aphrodite gives her charm, Hermes slips her cunning. They name her Pandora All-Gifted. She's presented not as punishment, but as a gift to mankind. The first woman, wrapped in beauty. She looks like salvation. But in her hands, the gods place a jar, later mistranslated as a box sealed tight, heavy with secrets. She's told never to open it, which, of course, is like waving a do not push button in front of anyone with curiosity. For a while, Pandora resists. She admires the jar's carvings, wonders at its weight, but every night as she lies in bed, The silence presses on her. What could be inside treasure knowledge, relief curiosity? The oldest itch in human history gnaws at her until she can't take it anymore. One night, she lifts the lid, and the world changes. Darkness spills out, not shadows, but living things. Disease, spreading like smoke. Famine, clawing through fields. Envy, slithering from person to person. Pain, decay, madness, greed, all pouring into the air like swarms of hornets. The silence is shattered by screams that never existed before. Cries of hunger, of sickness, of despair. Pandora stumbles back, horrified, trying to slam the lid shut, but it's too late. The world has been poisoned. The age of ease is gone. Humanity will never be untouched again. And yet something small clings inside. When she finally closes the jar, one thing remains at the bottom, trembling in the dark. Elpis. Hope. The only thing that didn't escape. It's cruel. Really. Hope doesn't undo suffering, it just keeps you alive long enough to feel more of it. Here's the thing. Pandora didn't just open a jar, she basically hit send all on the universe's worst chain email. 1 second, humanity's inbox is empty, peaceful, no spam, no pop-ups. The next, bam, diseases, jealousy, famine, corruption flooding in like endless junk mail you can't unsubscribe from. And the kicker. Every single plague comes with that same tagline. You can't delete this. Imagine living your life with a clean slate and suddenly your feed is nothing but misery. That's Pandora's gift. She's not the villain, though. She's just the unlucky user who clicked the link. The gods were the scammers all along. Zeus didn't throw lightning this time, he sent malware straight into humanity's hard drive. And yeah, there at the bottom was hope. Like the one cheery email in your inbox reminding you of a sale on something you don't need. Comforting. Maybe, but it doesn't erase the fact that everything else is still sitting there, cluttering your soul, pinging your nerves at 3 a.m. This is the Greek version of a welcome to the internet moment. Once it's opened, there's no going back. And from that night forward, no human ever slept the same again. Because once pain and fear escape into the world, they don't go back quietly. From here on out, humanity will never truly know peace. Zeus wins the war, crowns himself king of the universe, and for a moment it looks like he might finally break the family curse. But come on, this is Olympus. Trauma is the family heirloom, and Zeus polishes it like it's made of gold. He takes Metis as his partner, the goddess of wisdom, cunning, and careful planning. She's not flashy like Aphrodite, not destructive like Hera on a bad day. Metis is the strategist, the one who could actually make Zeus look smart by association. For a while, things almost seem balanced. Then comes the prophecy. Always a prophecy. This one whispers that Métis will bear 2 children: the first, a daughter, strong and wise; the second, a son who will overthrow Zeus just as Zeus overthrew Kronos, just as Kronos overthrew Uranus. The cycle, relentless as ever. Zeus doesn't laugh it off. He doesn't say, "Not me, I'm different." He panics, and panic, for Zeus, never ends with therapy. It ends with violence. So, one day, as Métis sits beside him, carrying his child, Zeus acts. He opens his mouth and swallows her whole, not figuratively, literally. One moment she's there, offering him counsel, her voice soft but steady. The next, silence. She's gone, digested into the king's body like contraband locked in a vault. Wisdom, unborn child, everything. And for a while, he struts around Olympus convinced he's beaten fate. Another prophecy dodged, another loose end tied up. But then it begins. The pain. It's not just a headache. It's torture hammering inside his skull. Imagine standing in a thunderstorm where every bolt strikes directly into your forehead. He stumbles, he groans, he claws at his face. Even the other gods who've seen just about everything watch him with wide eyes. Zeus, the Thunder King, brought to his knees by what looks like the world's worst migraine. Days pass, and the agony only builds. He can't think. He can't rule. He can barely breathe without feeling the thunder rattle inside his bones. Finally, desperate, he begs for help. Enter Hephaestus the smith, the craftsman, the one god with the tools and the nerve. He doesn't ask questions. He doesn't hesitate. He hefts his axe, steps up to the king of gods, and brings it down on his skull. The crack echoes across Olympus, and out steps Athena. Not a baby, not an infant, but a fully grown goddess, armoured head to toe, eyes blazing, spear in hand. She doesn't whimper, she doesn't cry. She bellows a war cry so fierce the halls of Olympus shake. Imagine being born and instantly scaring everyone in the delivery room that's Athena. She stands tall, radiant, terrifying. The living embodiment of the wisdom and strength Zeus tried to bury. Her mother's cunning, her father's arrogance, a goddess born from paranoia, pain, and a split skull. Zeus wipes the blood from his brow and tries to pretend this was the plan all along, that he meant to give birth through his forehead like some deranged cosmic magic trick. But the truth lingers. Obvious to everyone watching, he didn't beat the prophecy. He just made it stranger. Athena takes her seat among the Olympians without apology, sharper and more commanding than most of them put together. She is the reminder that no matter how desperately Zeus tries to outrun fate, destiny always finds a way to burst through, sometimes literally. And so the family drama keeps spinning. Another child born not out of love, but out of fear. Another chapter in Olympus's long-running reality show. Season 1 ended with Kronos vomiting up his kids. Season 2, Zeus giving birth through his skull, and trust me, the ratings are only going up. If Zeus's paranoia gave us Athena, Hera's pride gave us a soap opera that could run for 20 seasons. See, Hera wasn't just the queen of the gods, she was the queen of grudges, and her marriage to Zeus. Let's just say it made the Kardashians look like a church picnic. Enter Hephaestus, her son. Now, some say Zeus was the father. Some say Hera did it alone out of spite either way. Hephaestus was born different. Not golden like Apollo, not radiant like Hermes. He was rough around the edges, awkward, and in Hera's eyes, imperfect. She took one look and, in a fit of disgust, hurled him off Olympus. Imagine being born and your mum's first instinct is, nope, return to sender. He plummeted for an entire day before crashing into the sea, where he grew up in secret, nursing both wounds and rage. And unlike the other gods, Hephaestus didn't have charm, but he had skill, fire, metal, creation, while his family squabbled in the clouds. He was down in his forge, building weapons, jewellery, traps. If Olympus had an Etsy shop, Hephaestus was the 5-star seller. Meanwhile, Aphrodite enters the picture. Born from sea foam and castrated genitals, yeah, Greek mythology doesn't do normal births. She became the goddess of love, lust, and desire. Everyone wanted her, but guess who Zeus decided she'd marry? Not the dashing Apollo, not the war god Ares. Nope, Hephaestus, the unwanted smith. It was like pairing a supermodel with the quiet guy who fixes her Wi-Fi. And oh, the drama that followed. Aphrodite, unsurprisingly, wasn't thrilled. She found her excitement elsewhere with Ares, the war god who thought muscles were a substitute for personality. Their affair was Olympus's worst-kept secret, but they thought they were slick. Midnight rendezvous, whispered promises, the kind of stuff tabloids would eat alive today. Hephaestus, though he wasn't clueless, he was patient. He set a trap worthy of a sitcom villain. He forged an unbreakable golden net, fine as spider silk but strong as steel. Then one night, when Aphrodite and Ares were tangled up in each other, he sprung it. The net slammed shut, locking them together in the most compromising position possible, naked, flailing, completely exposed. And Hephaestus didn't just catch them, he invited the whole pantheon to watch. Imagine a divine family dinner turning into an impromptu roast. Poseidon chuckling into his cup. Apollo pretending to cover his eyes but peeking through his fingers. Hermes making jokes so fast no one could keep up. Even Zeus, king of cheaters himself, couldn't stop laughing. For once, the thunder god wasn't the scandal, he was the audience. But beneath the humour, there was venom. Hephaestus humiliated them, yes, but he also showed Olympus what he was capable of, cunning sharper than any blade. Hera, who once tossed him aside, now had to face the fact that her flawed son had just turned the entire court into unwilling reality TV spectators. The fallout was messy. Ares slunk away, humiliated but unpunished because war never really gets cancelled. Aphrodite brushed it off, because beauty is its own shield, and Hephaestus, he went back to his forge, more bitter, more brilliant than ever. It was petty, it was cruel, and it was hilarious. Olympus wasn't just a throne room, it was a stage, and every god knew their scandals were entertainment. The golden net wasn't just a trap for two lovers, it was a mirror, showing all of Olympus how absurd they really were. And that's the running theme here. These gods were supposed to be our ideals, our examples. Instead, they were like reality show contestants with lightning bolts and spears. Betrayal, revenge, slapstick comedy. It wasn't divine. It was painfully human. And that's what made the audience mortals like you and me unable to look away. Because if the gods can't keep their house in order, what hope do the rest of us have if you thought the love triangles on Olympus were messy? Wait until you see the custody battle over an entire city. Athens, the shining jewel of Greece, wasn't always called that. It had to be won. And the competition between two of Olympus's biggest egos, Poseidon and Athena. Poseidon was the god of the sea, brother of Zeus, and self-proclaimed cool uncle who thought tridents and horses would impress everyone. Athena, on the other hand, was wisdom incarnate, sharp, strategic, and armed with a sense of humour so dry it could parch the desert. When the two gods locked eyes on the future city, it was less civil negotiation and more season finale showdown. The Council of Mortals asked the obvious question, which god could give them the better gift? Whoever delivered would be the city's patron. Simple, right? Poseidon, never one to think things through, strutted forward like he was about to drop the hottest mixtape of the Bronze Age. With a dramatic slam of his trident into the earth, water gushed upward. Mortals gasped. A brand new spring, Poseidon had literally struck water, but when they tasted it, their excitement curdled. Salt water, completely undrinkable. He'd basically given them an ocean, on land. It was like showing up to a potluck with a gallon of seawater and saying, "You're welcome." Then came Athena's turn. No flashy entrance, no thunderous crack of weapons, just a quiet moment. She planted a seed into the soil, slowly, impossibly. An olive tree sprouted, its silver-green leaves shimmering in the sunlight. The mortals didn't just see food, they saw oil for cooking, wood for carving, branches for peace. Athena had given them survival, prosperity, and culture wrapped into one humble tree. Poseidon, of course, lost his mind. He ranted, raved, demanded a rematch. He swore the vote was rigged, but the people had already made up their minds. They chose Athena. The city became Athens, and Poseidon stormed off, muttering salty curses that sounded suspiciously like the crashing of waves. And here's the kicker. Athens became the beating heart of Greek culture philosophy. Art, democracy. All thanks to the goddess who knew that brains trump brawn, and that sometimes the smartest flex is the quietest one. Poseidon could flood villages and shake the earth, but Athena gave humanity ideas that outlasted earthquakes. Of course, the irony wasn't lost on anyone. A city that worshipped wisdom became one of the bloodiest battlegrounds in history. Its democracy was fragile, its wars endless. Maybe that was the hidden joke of Olympus, even when the gods gave gifts. They came with strings attached. And Poseidon, he never let it go. Every storm that battered Athens' coast felt like a divine tantrum. Every earthquake like Poseidon shaking the table just to remind them, you could have had me. The rivalry wasn't just divine pettiness, it was symbolic. The sea versus the land, instinct versus intellect, the brute force of nature against the patient growth of culture. And for once, humanity sided with patience. They chose the tree over the wave, and in doing so, they set themselves on a path towards civilization messy, imperfect, but enduring. But here's where the drama feels eerily modern. Imagine pitching this as a reality show. Two powerful contestants. One shows up with a flashy but useless stunt. The other quietly plants a seed that changes the world. The crowd votes, Twitter explodes, and the loser throws a fit. Sound familiar? It's not just Greek mythology, it's every talent show you've ever hate-watched. That's the beauty of these myths. They're timeless not because of the magic, but because they mirror us. We're still watching the same story play out, arrogance versus wisdom, noise versus substance, and just like the mortals of Athens, we're still trying to pick which gift will save us. If you take a step back and squint, Olympus isn't some lofty divine kingdom, It's basically the world's first reality TV show. Swap out the togas for designer outfits, the thunderbolts for Twitter feuds, and you've got a series Netflix would pay billions to stream. Every feud, every hookup, every betrayal, it's all there. Think about it. Zeus. He's the executive producer and the main character, forever trying to control the storyline while simultaneously getting caught in scandal after scandal. His affairs with elite celebrity tapes of the ancient world, whispered about in every temple like tabloids at a grocery store checkout, and Hera. She's the long-suffering wife who's both victim and villain, plotting revenge arcs so spicy they'd trend every week. Ares was that messy cast member who thrived on chaos, showing up to every scene shirtless, oiled up and ready to throw hands. Aphrodite. She was the influencer of Olympus, crafting thirst traps so effective they could start wars. Hephaestus, meanwhile, was the underdog engineer who kept the cameras rolling, literally building the set's thrones, palaces, even the infamous golden net that trapped his wife and brother in flagrante delicto. Each storyline played like a season. Season 1, the birth of Athena, with a shocking mid-season twist when Zeus cracks open his own skull like a piñata. Season 2, the love triangle of the century featuring Aphrodite, Ares, and poor Hephaestus stuck in the world's worst open marriage. Season 3, the battle for Athens, a competition show where the prize was an entire city, and the season finale's always bloody, always dramatic. Gods turning on each other, mortals paying the price. Whole empires caught in the crossfire like extras hired just to raise the stakes. You couldn't binge-watch this stuff, it was too heavy, too absurd, too painfully familiar. Because here's the thing, Olympus wasn't about divinity, it was about drama. The gods weren't untouchable, they were messy, petty, deeply insecure. They didn't sit above humanity, they mirrored it, with all the volume cranked up. Every betrayal, every power struggle, every awkward family dinner, they lived it so we could project our chaos onto them. And just like today's reality TV, the gods thrived on being watched. Their temples weren't just holy places, they were the ancient equivalent of live streams. People gathered, gossiped, reenacted stories, spread the myths. Worship was a ratings game, and the gods knew it. The more outrageous their storylines, the more sacrifices they raked in. It's not hard to imagine Zeus checking the viewership numbers of his latest escapade, or Hera calculating her revenge arc to maximize sympathy. Even Athena, goddess of wisdom, wasn't above it. Her olive tree gift was basically a PR stunt that secured her brand forever. Olympus wasn't a pantheon, it was a content machine, endlessly churning out storylines to keep humanity hooked. And here's the wild part: it worked. We're still here, thousands of years later, talking about them. Their scandals lasted longer than any Kardashian headline, outlived empires, shaped entire cultures. That's the ultimate flex, not immortality through power, but immortality through relevance. So if you've ever rolled your eyes at a reality show, or muttered who even watches this junk, just remember humanity's been watching this junk since the Bronze Age. And deep down, we can't look away. The gods were the original influencers, their myths the original binge-worthy drama, but like any show that runs too long, there's always the risk of jumping the shark. And for Olympus, that shark came disguised as love, because when love entered the script, the comedy of affairs turned into the tragedy of blood. Medusa's story is one of those myths that Hollywood loves to twist into a monster flick. She's usually portrayed as this terrifying snake-haired villain who turns men to stone with a glare. But peel back the layers, and you find something way darker, something that feels less like a monster tale and more like a cautionary story about power, blame, and victim shaming that would still trend on Twitter today. Medusa wasn't always a monster. In the beginning, she was human mortal, beautiful, admired by everyone who saw her. Her hair, people said, shimmered like silk spun from sunlight, and that's where her tragedy began. Because in the hierarchy of Olympus, beauty wasn't a blessing, it was bait. Poseidon, lord of the sea, noticed her, and as myths often remind us, when a god notices a mortal, it's never a good thing. One version of the story has him pursuing her inside Athena's temple, a sacred space, a place of supposed safety. What happened there wasn't love, it wasn't even lust, it was power Poseidon taking what he wanted, as gods so often did. And here's where the cruelty doubles down. Athena, finding her temple defiled, doesn't punish Poseidon. No, he gets off scot-free. Instead, Athena turns her fury on Medusa, the victim. She curses her beauty, twisting those golden strands into writhing serpents, her soft gaze into a petrifying weapon, from adored maiden to walking nightmare in a single act of divine spite. It's the oldest move in the book: blame the woman, not the man. Punish the powerless, not the powerful. The gods, for all their grandeur, operated like the worst kind of toxic workplace, where the boss's buddy never faces consequences and HR turns the victim into the scapegoat. But here's the thing. Medusa's curse wasn't just punishment. It was survival. Nobody could ever touch her again, not without turning to stone. She became untouchable in the most brutal way possible. Alone, isolated, feared, yet finally safe in her exile. Until Perseus shows up, armed with gifts from the gods, sent not to avenge her suffering but to use her head as a weapon. Even in death, she's objectified, her severed head mounted like a trophy, her pain turned into somebody else's superpower. Dark, right? But here's the twist of irony that Greek mythology does so well. Medusa's head ends up strapped to Athena's shield. The same goddess who cursed her now parades her as a symbol of protection. It's the mythological equivalent of an abuser stealing their victim's voice to make themselves look powerful. And that's why Medusa resonates so much today. She isn't just a monster. She's a mirror, a story about how victims are silenced, twisted, and weaponized by those who claim to protect justice. Her legend isn't about snakes and statues. It's about the way power rewrites trauma into entertainment, turning suffering into spectacle. Picture it: a woman punished for the crime of being desired, a victim turned into a villain, and centuries later, we still debate whether she was truly a monster or just a reminder of everything society didn't want to face. On Olympus, this wasn't a horror story. It was just another season of the show. But for us, it still feels raw, because it's not just mythology. It's the same script humanity keeps recycling, with new names, new victims, but the same old ending. If Medusa's story was about punishment dressed up as justice, Orpheus and Eurydice is about love dressed up as hope, only to unravel into one of the most gut-punching tragedies in all of Greek mythology. Orpheus wasn't just any mortal. He was the guy you'd call if Spotify existed. Back then his music wasn't background noise. It was the kind of sound that could make stones cry and rivers change course. When he played, the whole world leaned in. Animals sat down, trees bent closer, even the gods stopped bickering long enough to listen. And Eurydice. She was his muse, his partner, his everything. But here's where it goes dark, fast. On their wedding day, the one moment that should have been all sunshine and happily ever after, Eurydice stepped on a snake. One bite, one breath later, she was gone. Imagine that your whole life about to start, and fate yanks it out from under you before the first dance. Now, most mortals would grieve, maybe build a statue, maybe write a sad poem. But Orpheus, he wasn't having it. He decided he'd walk into hell itself if that's what it took to get her back. So he descended into the underworld, harp in hand, heart cracked wide open. And here's where the myth hits you like a late-night Netflix binge. His music worked. When Orpheus played for Hades and Persephone, even those rulers of death melted. Hades cold, unflinching. Hades actually wiped away a tear. They agreed to let Eurydice go, but with one condition: Orpheus had to lead her out without looking back until they both reached the surface. It sounds simple, right? Just don't look back. But grief doesn't play by logic. Doubt doesn't play by rules. Imagine walking through a cavern so dark you can't see your own hands, every step echoing, your heart screaming. What if she's not really there? What if they tricked me? You'd want proof. You'd crave it. And that's the tragedy. Just as daylight broke and freedom was within reach, Orpheus turned his head. One glance, one heartbeat, and Eurydice was ripped away, pulled back into the shadows forever. Gone. Not by fate this time, but by the one person who loved her most. It's the kind of story that feels almost cruel in its simplicity. A rule so easy, yet impossible when your chest is burning with doubt. A happy ending dangled like a carrot, only to be yanked away with surgical precision. Greek myths never wasted a chance to remind mortals hope is dangerous, and love can be a weapon sharper than any sword. Here's the part where the irony stings Orpheus. The man who could make mountains weep couldn't play a song sweet enough to silence his own fear. And in the end, his gift, his music, his passion wasn't enough to save the person it mattered to most. Tragically poetic, right, but also deeply human. Because who among us wouldn't look back? Who wouldn't want that tiny reassurance? Even if the stakes were cosmic, that's why this story lasts. It's not about gods or monsters, it's about us. About the impossible weight of trust when everything you love is on the line. And in the Greek reality show, this wasn't just a sad love song. It was content another season finale, another reminder that even the best of us, even the purest love, can crumble under the simplest test. If Orpheus and Eurydice showed love slipping through your fingers, Aphrodite and Ares show what happens when love turns messy, tabloid-level messy. Think of it as Olympus's answer to TMZ, the goddess of love sneaking around with the god of war. It's passion, chaos, and scandal all wrapped into one. On paper, Aphrodite should have had the dream marriage. She was the embodiment of beauty, desire, the kind of goddess whose very glance could topple empires. And her husband Hephaestus, the divine blacksmith, master craftsman, builder of Zeus' thunderbolts. Talented, yes, but charming. Not so much. He was lame in one leg, quiet, awkward, spending more time in his forge than at the dinner table. To Aphrodite, he was, well, let's say, reliable background furniture. Enter Ares. If Hephaestus was the guy fixing your Wi-Fi, Ares was the bad boy biker who shows up at midnight revving his engine. Tall, brash, violent, reckless. The god of war wasn't subtle, but he was magnetic, and Aphrodite couldn't resist. Their affair was fire and gasoline loud, messy, and impossible to hide. But here's where the myth gets deliciously ironic. Hephaestus, the quiet craftsman, outsmarted them both. He built a trap, not a bear trap, but a net so fine, so unbreakable, that not even gods could slip through. And he set it above the very bed where Aphrodite and Ares met in secret. One night, as passion reached its peak, Hephaestus let the net drop. Boom! The goddess of love and the god of war tangled up like fish in a web, naked and flailing, their divine glory looking a lot less dignified. And then came the punchline Hephaestus invited the whole pantheon to watch. Imagine it! Poseidon chuckling in the corner, Hermes cracking jokes, Apollo trying not to spit out his wine. Even the usually stoic Hestia probably side-eyed the scene. It wasn't just a scandal, it was entertainment. Olympus turned into a roast session, with the two most glamorous gods humiliated for everyone's amusement. And here's the darker layer beneath the comedy. This wasn't just about adultery, it was about power and exposure. Aphrodite, goddess of desire, caught like any mortal cheat. Ares, the swaggering god of war, reduced to a blushing fool, and Hephaestus, the underestimated outcast, finally getting the last laugh not through strength or beauty, but through brains. You can almost hear the sarcastic commentary, even gods cheat, even gods get trapped, and yes, even gods get roasted in front of their peers. The Greeks loved this story not just because it was funny, but because it dragged their untouchable deities down into the same mud mortals waded through every day. Of course, the affair didn't end. Aphrodite and Ares kept sneaking around, because in Olympus, drama never dies, it just gets a new season. But that public shaming stuck. It was a reminder no matter how beautiful, how powerful, or how dangerous you are, hubris will catch up to you. It's almost sitcom energy, but with a tragic bite. Love and lust, when unchecked, can humiliate you more thoroughly than any battlefield loss. And in the world of the gods, your personal shame wasn't private, it was spectacle. A cosmic laugh track rolled while two divine icons squirmed in a net. That's the genius of Greek myth turning human flaws into divine comedy. Lust becomes scandal, jealousy becomes a trap, and marriage becomes less happily ever after and more reality TV meltdown. If Olympus was a show, this was the episode that crashed the ratings. If the Aphrodite and Ares scandal was comedy wrapped in humiliation, The story of King Midas is tragedy disguised as a wish-fulfillment fantasy. It starts with something we all secretly crave more. More wealth, more comfort, more control. Midas was the poster child of greed, and the Greeks, with their wicked sense of humour, made sure his dream became his nightmare. Midas wasn't a god. He was mortal, a king of Phrygia, famous for his gardens and his love of luxury. Gold to him wasn't just currency, it was identity. When Dionysus, god of wine and chaotic generosity, granted him a single wish, Midas didn't hesitate. He didn't ask for health, wisdom, or peace. No, he asked for the golden touch. Everything he laid his hands on would turn to solid gold. At first, it was intoxicating. Imagine walking through your palace, brushing your fingers along stone walls and watching them glitter into treasure. Chairs, cups, even roses in the garden. Suddenly, Midas was surrounded by a kingdom of wealth, his name glowing brighter than any jewel. The villagers whispered in awe. Other kings envied him. He was living the dream, but dreams rot fast when they're fed by greed. Hunger struck first. He sat down to eat, tearing bread from a loaf, solid gold in his mouth, breaking his teeth. Wine poured into his goblet, liquid sunshine hardened into a useless brick. Every meal became a mockery, a feast he could never touch. And then came the real gut punch, his daughter. In some versions of the story, she was his pride and joy, running into his arms after a long day. But when he hugged her, his blessing became her coffin. Flesh to gold, heartbeat to silence, a statue forever, frozen mid-embrace. The gods didn't have to punish him. He punished himself with his own wish. Here's where the Greeks added their signature dark humour. The so-called golden touch was the ancient version of winning the lottery only to lose it all. It's like the universe saying, "Congrats, buddy. You wanted everything. Well, now you get nothing." The irony hit like a slap. The man who wanted abundance couldn't taste bread, couldn't drink water, couldn't hold the person he loved most. The myth doesn't end with him starving to death, though. In his despair, Midas begged Dionysus to take the gift back. The wine god, amused by his misery, offered a solution: wash the curse away in the river Pactolus. Midas plunged his hands into the current, watching the power leach out of him, turning the riverbed golden. He survived, but he carried the shame forever. The Greeks made sure every listener knew the price of unchecked desire. And if you zoom out, it's more than just a cautionary tale, it's satire. The Greeks saw the same hunger in their leaders, in their neighbours, maybe even in themselves. Midas is the ancient mirror held up to every society that worships wealth above humanity. They turned his downfall into a parable that still stings today, because deep down, who hasn't had that thought, if only I had more money? Life would be perfect. And then comes the chilling whisper. But at what cost? What makes this story stick is its blend of horror and comedy. Watching Midas turn his food into gold is almost slapstick. But watching him turn his daughter into a statue that's nightmare fuel. The Greeks loved that balance, reminding us that tragedy often hides behind the mask of wish fulfillment. So if Aphrodite and Ares gave Olympus its reality show scandal, Midas gave humanity its eternal warning label: be careful what you wish for. Sometimes the thing you crave most will starve you, crush you, or worse, turn your love to lifeless stone. If Midas showed us how greed eats you alive, Sisyphus is the ultimate meme of eternal failure. You know that feeling when you clean the kitchen, turn around, and someone's already left dirty dishes in the sink, or when you finish a big project at work, only for your boss to say, "Actually, can you redo it?" But better multiply that frustration by infinity, and you've got Sisyphus. Sisyphus was king of Corinth, but more importantly, he was a professional troublemaker. He thought he was smarter than the gods, and for a while, he kind of was. He tricked Thanatos, the god of death, chaining him up so no one could die. Imagine a battlefield where soldiers keep fighting because death is literally on pause wounds piling up, but no release. Even Hades panicked, because the underworld was empty. When the gods finally freed Thanatos, Sisyphus had another trick ready. He told his wife not to bury him, so when he died, he begged Persephone for a hall pass back to the living, claiming he needed to correct the ritual. She let him go and he just didn't come back. Classic Sisyphus move, outsmart death. Twice. But here's the thing about playing chess with immortals eventually. They flip the board. Zeus had enough of Sisyphus's smug little victories. His punishment wasn't quick, like a lightning bolt. It was slow, grinding psychological torture. Picture a massive boulder taller than a house, heavier than anything human hands should push. Sisyphus was condemned to roll it up a steep hill. Sweat dripping, muscles screaming. Inch by inch he forced it upward, and every single time just before the peak, the boulder slipped from his grasp, thundered down, and he had to start over. That's his eternity. No rest, no progress, just the illusion of achievement shattered at the last second. What makes this punishment genius, if we can call divine cruelty genius, is how relatable it is. The Greeks didn't pick some exotic torture like fire or poison. They picked the universal ache of futility. The gods basically said, hey humans, you know that endless grind you complain about? Yeah, imagine it never ends. There's a dark humour here too. Olympus turned cardio into hell. Sisyphus is the patron saint of pointless effort. The ancient Greeks looked at their fields, their wars, their bureaucracies, and saw themselves in his endless uphill climb. His story was less about divine wrath and more about cosmic sarcasm. Work hard, die anyway. And yet, buried in the cruelty, there's a weird kind of poetry. Later philosophers like Camus reimagined Sisyphus not as broken, but as defiant. He knows the boulder will fall, but he keeps pushing. The act of rebellion is in the persistence. There's something oddly inspiring in his eternal futility, like the human spirit refusing to surrender even when the game is rigged. Still, let's be real. If you strip away the philosophy, Sisyphus's fate is the ultimate middle finger from the gods, a reminder that no matter how clever you are, Olympus has the last laugh, and their sense of humour brutal. So the next time you're stuck in a dead-end job, staring at a mountain of paperwork that only grows as you finish it, remember you're not alone. Somewhere in the underworld, Sisyphus is sweating alongside you, muttering curses at a rock that just won't stay put. If Sisyphus is the symbol of pointless effort, Tantalus is the icon of endless temptation. His very name gave us the word tantalize, because his punishment is basically a cosmic prank built around dangling what you want most right in front of you, and then snatching it away. Tantalus wasn't just some random mortal. He was the son of Zeus himself, which should have made him untouchable. He dined at Olympus, shared the gods' food and drink, even sat at their table. Imagine being invited into the world's most exclusive VIP lounge, ambrosia cocktails, nectar shots, gossip straight from Hera's lips. Tantalus had that access, and like so many people handed privilege, he blew it spectacularly. He stole ambrosia and nectar to give to mortals, like a divine Robin Hood, but not out of compassion. He wanted clout, to show off, to act like he was equal to the gods. Then to top it off, he tried to test the gods' all-knowing wisdom in the sickest way possible. He killed his own son, Pelops, chopped him up, cooked him, and served him at a feast, just to see if the gods would notice. That wasn't just cruelty, that was arrogance dressed up as curiosity. The gods were horrified. Demeter, distracted by grief, absent-mindedly ate a piece of Pelops' shoulder, but the rest of the gods refused to touch the meal. Zeus resurrected Pelops, fixed his shoulder with ivory, and saved him. But for Tantalus there would be no mercy. His betrayal was too grotesque. So the gods devised a punishment that was pure psychological warfare. They placed Tantalus in a crystal-clear lake, water lapping at his chin, thirst burned in his throat, his lips cracked, his tongue swollen. He bent down to drink, but every time his mouth touched the surface, the water drained away, retreating just out of reach. And it wasn't just water. Above his head, branches hung heavy with ripe fruit pears, figs, pomegranates, sweet as paradise. Hunger gnawed at his belly. He stretched out his hands, fingertips brushing the skin of a fig, and the branch recoiled, snapping back, always out of reach, forever hungry, forever thirsty, forever taunted by abundance he could never taste. It's a punishment that cuts deeper than any whip or chain. The Greeks knew that physical pain fades, but desire denied. That's the kind of torment that crawls under your skin and never lets go. The gods didn't just want Tantalus to suffer, they wanted him to ache. And here's the twisted irony. Mortals looking at his fate saw themselves. Farmers staring at drought-cracked earth, workers grinding for scraps while wealth dangled above them, always in reach, but never theirs. Tantalus wasn't just one man cursed. He was a mirror for humanity's struggle, forever striving, never satisfied. There's a bleak humour in it too. The gods basically invented the ultimate look but don't touch scenario. It's like being stuck in a room full of desserts behind glass cases, knowing you'll never get a bite. Or scrolling Instagram at 2 home, starving, while influencers post lobster feasts you can't afford. Olympus was trolling him with eternal FOMO. What makes Tantalus' story so chilling is that he started from privilege. He had everything: favour, power, access, and he squandered it out of pride and cruelty. His punishment is the gods' reminder nothing stings harder than losing what you once took for granted. And so he stands, forever parched, forever hungry, forever mocked by the abundance he can see but never claim. If Sisyphus teaches us about futility, Tantalus teaches us about deprivation. Both lessons hurt, but this one starves you slowly, day after day, century after century. If Tantalus' torment is about craving what you can't have, Ixion's fate is about spinning forever in the fire of your own sins, literally. His story is one of the wildest, sleaziest scandals in Greek mythology, and that's saying something in a universe where fathers eat their children and mothers birth monsters. Ixion started out as a mortal king of the Lapiths, a tribe in Thessaly, but power wasn't enough. He wanted more, always more. When he married, he refused to pay the bride price to his father-in-law. Instead, he lured the man into a trap and murdered him by shoving him into a bed of burning coals. It was betrayal laced with fire, a crime that made even other kings recoil. The Greeks called this act miasma, a kind of spiritual pollution. To kill your kin wasn't just a crime. It was a cosmic offense that clung to your soul like smoke, staining everything you touched. Ixion begged for purification, and unbelievably Zeus gave it. The king of gods, in his occasional mercy, invited Ixion up to Olympus, washed him clean of blood guilt, and gave him a seat among the immortals. And what did Ixion do with that divine second chance? He immediately tried to seduce Hera. It's almost comical in its audacity. Imagine getting a pardon from the president, being flown to the White House as an honoured guest, and then hitting on the First Lady in front of everyone. That's Ixion, entitled, reckless, drunk on his own arrogance. Zeus, of course, knew. He wasn't about to let this slide, so he devised a trap of his own. Instead of Hera, he conjured a cloud shaped exactly like her Nephil. They called it Ixion, thinking his seduction was successful, coupled with the phantom cloud. From that bizarre union came the race of centaurs, half man, half horse, wild, violent, ungovernable. The very existence of centaurs was a cosmic joke, Ixion's lust made flesh, a mistake galloping across the earth for generations. But Zeus still had to punish the man himself. Forgiveness had been wasted. The gods sentenced Ixion to a fate that was both poetic and terrifying. He was bound to a massive fiery wheel, set ablaze, and hurled into the sky. There he spins, endlessly. Flames licking his body, the wheel screaming through eternity. The image's brutal arms stretched, legs spread, chained to spokes, skin blistering under fire that never consumes him. No rest, no release. Just an eternal carousel of agony, where Sisyphus climbs and falls, and Tantalus reaches and starves. Ixion burns and spins a human torch strapped to an eternal ride. There's a biting irony in his punishment. Ixion betrayed hospitality, the sacred trust of Xenia, when he murdered his father-in-law. Then he betrayed Zeus' mercy by trying to violate Hera. So now, forever, he's the guest who will never leave the table, the intruder strapped to Olympus's cruel carnival ride. And if you listen closely, you can almost hear the Greek chorus laughing through the horror. Ixion becomes a dark warning wrapped in a punchline. Don't bite the hand that purifies you, and definitely don't flirt with the goddess whose husband holds the thunderbolts. The wheel, spinning in fire, is a perfect metaphor too. His lust, his violence, his arrogance, they just cycle back on themselves. No end, no learning, no redemption, just motion without meaning, just heat without light. And in that endless spin, you catch a glimpse of something disturbingly modern. We all know what it's like to be stuck in a loop of our own making, chasing the same toxic patterns, burning ourselves in the process, unable to get off the ride. Ixion just had his loop written into the stars, lit with fire, so no one would ever forget. He is the eternal reminder that some wheels, once set turning, never stop. If Sisyphus is condemned to pointless effort, and Ixion to endless spinning fire, then Erysichthon's curse is hunger, an appetite so bottomless it makes every meal a joke at his expense. His story doesn't just drip with tragedy, it bites with satire, like the gods were writing a parody about human greed. Erysichthon was a mortal king of Thessaly, infamous for one thing, arrogance toward the gods. He didn't just ignore them, he mocked them. And like so many cautionary tales in Greek mythology, his doom began with an axe. One day, in his hunger for building materials, Erysichthon set his sights on a sacred grove of Demeter, the goddess of harvest and grain. In the middle of that grove stood a towering oak, wrapped with garlands, dripping with offerings, humming with prayers. People believed the spirit of the goddess herself dwelled within it. To touch that tree was to touch Demeter. Erysichthon didn't care. He laughed, lifted his axe, and slammed it into the trunk. When his men hesitated, knowing what sacrilege this was, he threatened them with death if they refused to help. The first blow landed, and the tree bled, not sap blood. A priestess inside the grove cried out, cursing him, but Erysichthon only swung harder, severing the sacred oak until it groaned and fell, shaking the earth. That act tore something cosmic. Demeter doesn't punish lightly, but when she does, it's always tailored for Erysichthon. She summoned Limos hunger itself, not hunger as you and I know it, not a growling belly before dinner, but a supernatural being that crept into his bones and hollowed him from within. From that day on, Erysichthon could eat and eat and eat, and never be full. At first, he raided his storerooms, devouring grain, meat, fruit, honey, wine. But no matter how much he stuffed into his mouth, his stomach clawed at him, a furnace demanding more. His people watched their king transform from lord to beast, gobbling like a madman at his own feasts. Soon he consumed his wealth. He sold treasures, livestock, even his own daughter to buy food. And here, the myth twists darker. His daughter, given the gift of shape-shifting by Poseidon, slipped away each time, transforming into a bird, a fish, even a horse to escape her buyers and return to him. And what did Erysichthon do with this miracle? He sold her again, over and over. His greed devoured even her life, using her like a renewable resource to feed his stomach's black hole. But hunger doesn't bargain. It grows. When his riches and lands were gone, he turned on the poor, stealing their food. When the poor had nothing left to give, he turned on himself. The myth says that, at last, in a frenzy of need, Erysichthon devoured his own body, tearing at his own flesh until there was nothing left. It's grotesque, yes, but also bitterly funny in that Greek way. A man who desecrated the goddess of harvest ends up literally eating himself, consumed by his own appetite. Hunger became his mirror. It showed him the truth that he was nothing but want, a mouth with no bottom, a king who destroyed himself because he couldn't stop taking, and the Greeks, who knew famine all too well, took the story seriously. Hunger wasn't just a metaphor to them, it was a shadow that hovered every winter, every poor harvest. To turn hunger into a punishment was terrifyingly real, but by tying it to greed and sacrilege, they also turned it into moral theatre disrespect to the gods, and your stomach itself will revolt. Picture him, in your mind's eye gaunt and feral, tearing through barns, gnawing on bones, glaring at his own hands as if they were steak. You can almost hear the gods laughing, not kind laughter, but sharp, mocking. Olympus didn't need swords or chains to break you. Sometimes all it took was your own body turned traitor, and that's the bleak punchline in a universe full of thunderbolts and monsters. Sometimes the cruelest punishment is just giving a man exactly what he thinks he wants, and never letting him stop. And here's the thing about Olympus, the punishments weren't just cruel, they were theatrical. The gods didn't settle for justice, they had a flair for irony, the kind that feels like a cosmic late-night comedy sketch. If you squint, it's almost like the first reality show ever made, except the contestants never win, and the reruns never end. Take a step back and line them up Sisyphus huffing up that hill with his boulder, beads of sweat pouring like a busted faucet. CrossFit athletes would envy his calves, but he'll never get to flex on Instagram. Tantalus standing in water up to his chin but choking on thirst. A cruel punchline that makes you think the gods invented the first juice cleanse. Except his is eternal. Ixion spinning like a human fidget spinner. Flames licking at his back. The ultimate carnival ride designed by sadists. Disney would never. And Erisichthon, gnawing himself to pieces like a parody of Every Eat Until You Drop Buffet Challenge gone wrong, put them together, and Olympus looks less like a palace and more like a twisted gym. Cardio, weightlifting, endurance, dietary discipline is all there, only difference. These guys don't get cheat days. Call it the divine fitness program. Train until eternity, or until you collapse, whichever comes first. That's the genius of Greek myth. It was never just horror, it was satire. The gods weren't just punishing, they were roasting. Each sentence fit the crime like a custom-tailored insult, as if Zeus and company were running the first stand-up comedy club, and every mortal screw-up was fresh material. You almost hear Apollo, god of music, strumming a lyre in the background while cracking jokes. Ever hear the one about the guy who could drink an ocean but couldn't swallow a sip? But here's the dark undertone that makes it bite. These weren't just stories to chuckle at. They were mirrors. Every Greek listener knew hunger, knew labour, knew humiliation. They'd felt the stone of Sisyphus in their calloused hands, the thirst of Tantalus in dry summers, the spin of Ixion in endless cycles of war and debt. Myth dressed their pain in cosmic costumes, but underneath, it was human suffering polished into entertainment, wrapped as warning, and maybe that's why the gods never killed these men outright. Death would have been merciful. Eternal punishment. That's content. That's ratings. The gods knew what every modern streaming service knows suffering hooks the audience. If people can't look away from a car crash, why would they look away from a man doomed to relive it forever? So you watch them, frozen in your mind's theatre. 4 men, 4 torments, looping on, and somewhere above them, Olympus shakes with laughter that isn't joy but mockery. And then, the laughter fades, because the myths are about to shift. Up until now, the spotlight has been on individuals, kings, cheaters, rebels, but Greece held darker tales, where punishment wasn't personal, it was collective. Entire cities, entire peoples swallowed whole by divine wrath. And that's where the real terror begins. Because if one man's arrogance could doom him forever, imagine what happens when an entire civilization offends the gods. The stage is set, the stone still rolls, the thirst still burns, the wheel still turns, the hunger still gnaws. But now, the camera pans out, wider and wider until you realize Olympus isn't done yet. The next act won't just be about a man, it'll be about nations, about war, about myth bleeding into history until you can't tell where the legend stops and reality begins. So brace yourself. If you thought eternal punishments were bad, wait until you see what happens when the gods take aim at everyone. And here's the cliffhanger. You thought you could laugh at the cursed kings, but soon you'll watch whole worlds burn, and you'll wonder, was it just a story, or a warning we never took seriously enough? The ground trembles, not the polite kind of tremor you get before a small quake, but a bone-deep shudder that makes your stomach flip, like the earth itself is gagging on something it can't hold down. Out of that crack in the world, they come the giants, not the gentle giants of fairy tales, not the jolly green mascots on cans of peas. These are mountains shaped into men, their skin bristling with thorns, their voices like thunder rolling across valleys. And here's the part that makes Olympus sweat. They aren't monsters born to be killed. They're children of Gaia, Earth herself. Every stomp they make is like your own mother slapping you across the face. The message is clear. You gods may think you're untouchable up there in your palace, but I birthed the soil you walk on, and I can weaponize it. The giants rise, and the Olympians panic. Zeus hurls his thunderbolts like a desperate quarterback, lightning flashing across the sky, but the blasts only stagger the hulking bodies. Hera shrieks orders, Athena grips her spear tighter than ever. Ares foams at the mouth like a rabid dog looking for anyone to bleed. But it's not enough. The gods can wound the giants, sure, but they can't kill them. Immortality runs in their veins, thick as tar. The Olympians do what all-powerful people do when things get out of hand: they cheat. There's a loophole hidden in the prophecy. The giants can't be killed by gods alone, only with the help of a mortal. It's the kind of legal fine print that makes you wonder if the universe was written by a very bitter lawyer. And so enters Heracles, not yet the polished hero of sanitized Disney lore, but the brute in a lion skin, sweat-soaked, muscle-corded, reeking of blood and beer. He's half god, half man, a walking contradiction, the bridge between divine and mortal, and in this moment, he's the god's hired hitman. Picture the scene, the sky split with fire, Olympus cracking under the weight of divine panic, while down below, Heracles moves through the battlefield like a storm-given flesh. He slams arrows dipped in Hydra's venom into giants' flesh, the poison sizzling like bacon grease. He swings his club, not elegant, not refined, but devastating, like someone using a tree trunk to squash cockroaches. One by one, the giants collapse, their blood soaking into the dirt that bore them, the earth itself groaning under the betrayal. The fight rages for 10 years, an echo of the Titanomachy, as if history itself can't resist the temptation to rerun old tragedies. Stones crash, mountains crack, oceans boil. Somewhere in the chaos, Apollo's arrows rain, Poseidon drowns giants under crashing waves, and Artemis takes careful aim, her arrows sliding into throats like whispers of death. But the decisive blow always needs Heracles. Without him, the gods are helpless. And that's the punchline. The immortals, with all their lightning and wisdom, can't win without human hands. For all their arrogance, their throne on Olympus rests on the shoulders of someone who will age, suffer, and eventually rot. The gods don't like to admit it, but the Gigantomachy exposes their dirty secret. They're scared, not of the giants, of us. Because if one mortal, even half-blooded, could decide the fate of gods, what happens when more rise up? What happens when faith shifts? When the stories stop feeding Olympus? When human voices choose silence instead of prayer for the first time? The gods catch a glimpse of their own mortality, reflected in the sweat and rage of Heracles. When the last giant falls, Olympus roars in triumph. Statues will be carved, hymns sung, temples raised. But in the corners of their hearts, even the gods know victory wasn't theirs alone. And that realization gnaws at them like a hidden worm in ripe fruit. Because once you admit you need mortals, you can never quite look at them the same way again. Crete glitters like a jewel in the Aegean. But inside King Minos's palace, the air stinks of rot disguised with incense. Minos, the kind of man who thinks divine favor is his birthright, had once prayed to Poseidon for a sign to prove his claim to the throne. The sea god answered. Out of the surf rose a bull so blindingly white it looked carved from moonlight. Minos was supposed to sacrifice it, to hand the gift back as a gesture of loyalty. Instead, greed gnawed him hollow. He kept the bull, paraded it like a trophy, and Poseidon, in that petty, cruel way only gods can manage, decided to twist the knife. The punishment didn't fall on Minos himself. That would have been too neat. Instead, his wife Pasiphae became the target. Imagine the queen lying awake, her body suddenly hijacked by a hunger she couldn't explain, a desire seeded not in her own heart but planted by Poseidon's curse. It wasn't love, wasn't lust, wasn't even choice, it was compulsion, the kind that robs you of dignity. Pasiphae fell in love with the bull, and by fell in love, I mean the curse burned her until she could think of nothing else. Here's where human ingenuity meets divine cruelty. She begged Daedalus, the inventor, the tinkerer, the poor bastard stuck cleaning up royal messes to help her, and he did, crafting a hollow wooden cow, lined with real hide, grotesquely convincing. Pasiphae climbed inside, the bull mounted, and soon enough, from that violation, the Minotaur was born, half man, half bull, all tragedy. The baby grew fast, his skin stretched tight over muscles, his eyes glared with animal madness. He had the body of a man but the head of a beast, a mouth full of grinding teeth. And worst of all, he hungered not just for food, but for flesh. No lullabies could soothe him. No cradle could contain him. By the time he towered over soldiers, his appetite had become legend, whispered in the halls of Knossos like a curse no one dared name aloud. Minos, humiliated yet too proud to admit his own role, turned again to Daedalus. This time, the genius built the labyrinth, an endless maze of twisting corridors, a prison disguised as architecture. Walls rose so high they scraped the sky. Corridors doubled back like a snake eating its tail. Dead ends choked with shadows. You could walk for hours, days, a lifetime and never find your way out. Into this stone stomach, Minos hurled his son, the Minotaur. But the beast didn't starve, because Minos found a workaround. Every 9 years, some say every year, Athens was forced to send tribute 7 boys and 7 girls. Fresh-faced youths marched in chains across the sea. They were led into the maze, their torches trembling in the dark, the echo of their footsteps multiplying against the stone. Somewhere ahead, a snort echoed, the scraping of hooves, the hungry breathing of something that should not exist. One by one, they disappeared into the dark. No bodies returned, no screams reached daylight, only silence, thick and final, drifting back up through the stone halls. The labyrinth became less a building and more a grave, an altar where children were fed to cover a king's sin. And here's the part that bites the story was told in Athens not as tragedy, but as humiliation. Every time the tribute was demanded, parents wept, lovers clung, and the whole city simmered with rage. The Minotaur wasn't just a monster in Crete's basement. It was a reminder of how easily the powerful feed on the powerless, how ritualized horror becomes tradition when it keeps a tyrant's pride intact. The Minotaur devoured more than flesh. He consumed hope, dignity, the illusion that justice mattered. Every time his jaws closed, Crete tightened its grip, and Athens bled. The maze was supposed to hide the shame, but it became a monument to it. The Greeks loved to pretend their myths were lessons, but in this one, the moral feels more like mockery. The sins of kings become the burden of their people, and the innocent always pay the bill. And yet, even in that dark maze, whispers of rebellion stirred. Somewhere, a young prince sharpened his resolve, promising that one day he'd walk into the labyrinth and walk back out again. The labyrinth wasn't just a prison, it was a spectacle, the kind of thing that made foreign visitors gape and mutter about Cretan genius. And in the middle of all this mess stood Daedalus, the reluctant architect. You have to imagine the man sketching plans late at night, candle dripping wax onto his papyrus, muttering under his breath about how he didn't sign up to be the godfather of monster daycare. Yet somehow, that's what he became. Here's the irony: Daedalus's labyrinth, meant to contain horror, ended up being one of the greatest works of art in myth. It wasn't just walls and corners, it was psychology carved into stone. Every path lured you deeper, promising a way out but twisting back on itself. No breadcrumb trail could save you. Every flicker of torchlight warped shadows so badly that even the bravest soul started to panic. It was, quite literally, the first escape room, except failure didn't mean you had to wait for an employee to let you out. Failure meant teeth, horns, and blood slicking the floor. Imagine the poor kids from Athens walking in, wide-eyed, clutching each other's hands. They weren't just trapped in stone, they were trapped in narrative. Minos told the story before they even entered. You won't come out. That's the power of design. Daedalus didn't just build walls, he built despair. The maze whispered, you're already dead. You just haven't realized it yet. And yet, while his masterpiece terrified nations, what did Daedalus get for it? Chains. Minos, paranoid to his bones, locked him up too just to make sure he couldn't spread his genius anywhere else. That's the thank you gift of kings work your magic and then rot in the very system you designed. If irony had a patron saint, it would have been Daedalus. Of course, he wouldn't stay locked up. This is where the escape room joke goes full circle. Daedalus invented wings, literal wings of feathers and wax, and strapped them to himself and his son, Icarus. You already know how that ended. Dad gliding steady, son soaring too high, the sun's heat melting his pride until he tumbled, screaming, into the sea. Another cruel joke: the man who built the maze finally escaped it, only to watch his child drown because freedom itself demanded another sacrifice. But the escape room comparison sticks for another reason. Think about what people pay for now, a Saturday night activity, where you and your friends get locked in a room full of puzzles, clocks ticking down, hearts racing, everyone pretending they're in danger, in Crete. Though it wasn't a game, it was the original immersive horror attraction except no actors, no props, no clever puzzles, just stone walls, a monster with a human body and a bull's head, and the knowledge that you weren't walking out alive. And doesn't that say something about us? We turn tragedy into entertainment. We look back at Daedalus's creation and laugh about it as a metaphor, as if the labyrinth wasn't a place where children died in droves. But that's myth for you. It takes suffering, dresses it up as allegory, and tells you to nod wisely. What strikes hardest, though, is how little the gods cared. Poseidon sparked the curse, Minos exploited it, Daedalus engineered it, and Athens paid the bill. Nobody in power suffered. The labyrinth was an escape room without an exit, unless you were clever enough or cruel enough to change the rules. And one day, someone would. A boy with a sword would step in, guided not by Daedalus's walls but by Ariadne's thread, and for once the story would crack. But until that moment, the maze stayed undefeated. A monument not to genius, not to justice, but to the way systems are built to crush the weak while the strong call it art. The thread of Ariadne changes everything, or at least, that's what the storytellers want you to believe. One simple chord, slipped into Theseus's palm, becomes the hack, the cheat code, the workaround to Daedalus's impossible game. With each careful step, he unwinds it behind him, tethering himself not to hope, but to the promise of return. And for once, the ending feels different. The boy doesn't vanish in the maze. He finds his way through, drives steel into the Minotaur's chest and emerges alive. The crowd cheers. Athens is free. The nightmare is over. Or is it? Because here's the catch. Every ending in Greek myth feels suspiciously like a pause button. Theseus kills the Minotaur. Yes, but in doing so, he betrays Ariadne, abandoning her on an island like yesterday's tool. The labyrinth may be empty now, but the cruelty just shifts, like water finding new cracks in stone. Minos still rules, gods still meddle, and Daedalus, somewhere in exile, still mourns his son. The monster dies, but the pattern lives on. That's the ache beneath the myth. Victory never actually breaks the cycle. Heroes win, but their wins curdle. Kings fall, but their heirs repeat the same arrogance. The gods strike down mortals for hubris, yet practice hubris themselves on a cosmic scale. The maze may be conquered, but look closely, it's just a symbol for something bigger. A loop, a wheel that keeps turning, grinding people under. Think of it like this: gigantomachy, titanomachy. Minotaur's maze, they're all the same story with different costumes. Giants rise, gods panic, mortals suffer. Someone clever intervenes. Balance is restored until the next threat. The myths read less like history and more like reruns. Different cast, same plot twist. Even the gods seem tired of it, recycling their punishments, dragging humanity back into despair every few generations. And you can almost hear the question echoing in the torchlit corridors of the labyrinth after the Minotaur falls. Does this ever stop? Do the gods ever tire of the games? Or do they need the suffering to feel alive? Does power always demand rebellion, and rebellion always spark new tyranny? Is the labyrinth truly gone, or do we just carry it with us in palaces, in laws, in stories told by firelight? That's what gnaws at you when you think too long about this myth. It isn't the blood, or the monster, or even the betrayal. It's the realization that you're still in the maze. Humanity never left. Every empire builds walls that promise protection but hide cages. Every ruler swears they're different, then turns into the same Minos. Every act of defiance breeds a new cycle of punishment. So when the storytellers leave you with Ariadne's thread trailing back through the darkness, it isn't closure, it's a reminder. Sure, Theseus found his way out, but you're still tracing those twisting halls. You're still searching for an exit in a system designed to confuse you, punish you, and call it destiny. And maybe that's why the myths endure, because they aren't just about gods or monsters. They're about us, wandering the same hallways, haunted by the same looping question, will it ever end? And as the echo of that question fades into silence, you realize something chilling. Maybe the gods didn't build the maze at all. Maybe humanity did, and the gods just watched. The story always pretends to be linear, as if you could trace a clean line from the first shiver of chaos to the gods perched high on Olympus. But you know better now it's never been a straight line. It's a spiral, looping tighter each turn, squeezing until even the gods can't breathe. Still, let's rewind, if only to hear the echoes. At the beginning, there was nothing, just a void, an open mouth without words. Chaos wasn't silence. It was the kind of noise so total it cancelled itself out, like static in your skull, from that emptiness. Gaia rose, heavy with patience, wide as eternity, ready to mother something into being. She birthed Uranus, and for a heartbeat, you think maybe the story will settle into peace. But no, he presses down, smothering his own children, as if fatherhood is the same thing as possession. The first cycle begins power-choking power. Then Kronos steps forward, the blade flashing. He slices the sky open, blood sprays, and from that violence crawl furies and monsters. You'd think breaking chains would mean freedom, but Kronos proves otherwise. He swallows his children whole, turning fear into diet. Another loop, another cycle of father against child, ruler against heir. Zeus breaks it again. Raised in hiding, fed on rebellion, he vomits up his siblings, gathers Cyclops and hundred-handed giants, and throws lightning until his father's rule collapses. The Titanomachy ends with victory, Zeus on the throne, Titans buried in Tartarus, Atlas bent under the weight of heaven. For a moment, you might almost call it justice, but victory curdles. Zeus fears betrayal, repeats paranoia, clutches at power like his father and grandfather before him. The gods expand the loop, pulling mortals into their orbit. Prometheus molds men from clay, steals fire, pays for it with his liver. Pandora cracks open the first box of horrors, releasing the spam folder of human misery. Sisyphus rolls his stone, Tantalus drinks air, Ixion spins on his wheel, and humanity. We stumble between awe and terror, praying for mercy from beings who look suspiciously like us, only meaner. By the time Theseus leaves Ariadne behind and Daedalus watches his son fall from the sky, the pattern is unmistakable. The gods punish. Mortals obey. Mortals rebel. Punishments deepen. Each act of resistance births another cage. Each victory plants seeds for the next downfall. It's less history than choreography, a dance performed for an audience that never changes its tune. And now, looking back, you see it clearly. From chaos to Gaia to Uranus, from Kronos to Zeus, from titans to mortals. It's always been the same script. You could swap names, swap weapons, swap faces, and the bones of the story wouldn't budge. The loop doesn't just persist, it tightens. The further you walk, the closer you get to where you began. That's the great trick of Greek myth. It never promises progress, only performance. The actors change, the costumes shift, but the stage remains the same, power gained through violence, kept through fear, lost through betrayal. And all the while, the gods laugh, because they know you'll keep watching, keep believing the next cycle will end differently. But you and I, we know better. You can almost feel the stage lights dim, the curtains threatening to fall, but they never do, because that's the secret. This isn't a play with an ending. It's a rerun, a loop pressed on repeat. Power in Greek myth doesn't resolve. It mutates. Every god, every hero, every king walks onto the stage with a swagger. Certain they're the exception, but give them a generation or two, and they're choking on the same paranoia, punished by the same downfall. Zeus sits on his throne, thunderbolts stacked like poker chips. He's won, right titans chained, giants crushed, mortals terrified. But look closer, he's haunted, always listening for footsteps behind him. The prophecy whispers that his children might rise, that his wife might outsmart him, that his brothers resent him. He becomes what Kronos was, what Uranus was, another link welded into the chain. That's the punchline. Even a god can't wriggle free from the cycle. And it isn't just the divine. Mortals mirror it in miniature. Kings claim their crowns, drenched in the blood of rivals, and swear they'll rule differently. Then they hoard, betray, fall. Cities rise, gleam, rot, burn. Generals conquer, carve borders, and watch them dissolve within their lifetimes. The Greeks told these stories not because they believed in happy endings, but because they knew endings don't stick. Everything is temporary. Every empire a sandcastle waiting for the tide. It's funny, in a grim way, how human beings have always longed for permanence while living inside a revolving door. We worshipped gods who couldn't break free themselves, who carried the same fears we do: fear of irrelevance, fear of being replaced. Think about it. What is eternity if all it buys you is more paranoia? Zeus is immortal, but he never sleeps easy. That's the cruel genius of the myth. Immortality isn't peace, it's exhaustion without escape. And maybe that's the warning buried inside the myths. We think of them as stories about people long gone, but the structure hasn't aged. Look around. Leaders still rise on promises, still turn into tyrants, still fall to rebellion, scandal, or time. Corporations grow fat, collapse under their own greed, only for another to take their place. Dynasties, governments, religions, it doesn't matter the costume. The rhythm is the same: chaos births power. Power hardens into cruelty. Cruelty sparks rebellion. Rebellion breeds new power. The loop tightens, again and again. You start to realize the Greeks weren't just telling tales of gods throwing tantrums on mountaintops. They were holding up a mirror. They were whispering, "Look, this is the pattern. Don't kid yourself, you're in it too." And you nod, because you feel it in your own bones. The cycle isn't just cosmic, it's personal. How many times have you sworn to break a habit, only to circle back? How often have you built something, only to watch it collapse under your own weight? The myths insist on this truth with a kind of cruel consistency. The cycle isn't broken, it's eternal. The wheel doesn't stop, it just spins faster. And if you're listening closely, you can almost hear it grinding above you now, the hum of inevitability, the click of the next turn waiting to land. You feel it most in the quiet, when the noise of the day dies down and you're left alone with that buzzing in the back of your skull. You close your eyes, maybe thinking you're drifting into peace, but the stories don't let you go. They curl around you like smoke, whispering that this isn't just their nightmare, it's yours too. You've been listening to gods fighting, mortals falling, punishments grinding on for eternity, but somewhere along the line, the distance disappeared. You're not just a spectator anymore. You're on the board. Picture it, the world laid out like a giant game. You're a piece, shuffled from one square to another, believing you're moving of your own will. But the dice are in someone else's hand. You build, you love, you reach for meaning, and the board shifts underneath you. The gods had their thrones, their thunderbolts, their labyrinths. You've got your job, your rent, your scrolling thumb at midnight, different props, same trap. You're pulled by rules you didn't make, obligations you never voted on, histories you inherited without consent. You tell yourself you're free, that you'll break the pattern, outrun the grind, escape the loop. But the myths shake their heads. Even the immortals couldn't. Why should you? Every ambition hooks into another chain. You chase money, you chase love, you chase safety, and each one drags you back to fear of losing it. Zeus feared his children. Sisyphus feared meaninglessness. You fear the silence after the screen goes dark. Same dread, different costume. And when you dream, that's when it hits hardest. You wake up inside these stories, you're Prometheus on the rock, gut burning, telling yourself tomorrow the eagle won't come. You're Orpheus, clutching for someone you've already lost, knowing your faith will slip at the worst moment. You're Theseus, stumbling through the maze, realizing you never asked who built it or why you agreed to walk in. You carry them all because they were never about them to begin with. They were about you. There's a moment, lying in bed, where your chest tightens with the recognition. You think maybe I've been living inside a myth all along. Maybe my struggles aren't unique, just rewrites of the same old plot. You see the cycles repeating in your family, your country, your own habits. You see how the same mistakes wear new masks but never vanish. You open your eyes, and for a second, it's like Olympus looms above. Tartarus yawns below, and you're dangling between them, neither free nor doomed, just suspended in the endless middle. And the cruelest part, the realization doesn't free you. It just sharpens the outline of your cage. You're awake now, aware that you're a piece in the game, but the board still stretches in every direction. You can rage, You can laugh, you can whisper into the dark, but you keep moving in circles, just like they did. You are them. They are you, and the loop keeps spinning. You reach for your phone, and suddenly it feels less like a tool and more like Pandora's jar, cracked open on your nightstand. Every swipe is another curse flying free fear packaged as headlines. Envy wrapped in filters. Distraction disguised as connection. The myths warned you the moment curiosity wins, it never goes back inside. And isn't that exactly what happened? One click, one peek, one scroll, and suddenly you're drowning in a flood of things you can't unsee. And then there's Zeus, except he doesn't wear a crown or hurl lightning anymore. He's the CEO in the corner office, face lit by the glow of endless data dashboards. He doesn't strike you down with thunderbolts. He serves you ads. He doesn't imprison titans. He locks up workers in contracts they can't escape. Same paranoia, same hunger for control. His children are startups. His thundercloud is the stock market, and every decision he makes ripples down to you whether you know it or not. You can almost hear his laugh echoing in the ping of another notification authority cloaked in convenience. And the Minotaur. You've been feeding it your whole life. The monster isn't in some stone labyrinth under Crete. It's waiting in the glow of apps designed to trap you. Its body is made of algorithms, horns sharpened on your attention span, eyes glowing with every data point you've ever given away. You step into its maze every time you unlock the screen. Endless corridors of content, promises of escape, but each path bends back toward the same center. Your time, your focus, your willpower, devoured one bite at a time. You tell yourself you're Theseus, brave enough to outsmart it. You download productivity apps, cut back your screen time, leave digital breadcrumbs to guide you out. But the walls shift. The maze was built by Daedalus, and Daedalus has an R&D budget bigger than nations. You think you're escaping, but you're just walking deeper, and the Minotaur waits, smiling, teeth sharp with your own exhaustion. The myths repeat, only the props change. Where once it was fire stolen from gods, now it's data stolen from you. Where once it was Pandora's jar unleashing famine, now it's push notifications spreading anxiety. Where once Zeus feared his children overthrowing him, now the CEOs fear their empires crumbling under scandals or regulation. Same cycle, same fear, same hunger, just a shinier disguise. And you, lying there in the dark, you realize it's never really been about them. It's about what the stories leave behind inside you. They've always been warnings, mirrors held up in the night, showing how power bends the world until it breaks, how curiosity carries both light and poison, how monsters are rarely defeated, just reborn in new shapes. You close your eyes, but the glow of the screen lingers, burned into your vision like a phantom torch. You see the jar open, the monster waiting, the throne trembling, and in that moment, you feel the weight of every cycle ancient, modern, and whatever comes after pressing down on you. You want to believe you can end it, that you're smarter, freer, stronger. But deep down, you know the truth. You're just another player stepping into the maze, another hand tugging at the lid of Pandora's jar, another piece moving on the board that never stops spinning. And so, you lie there, tangled in sheets and thoughts, breathing in the old dust of myths dressed in new clothes. Maybe tomorrow you'll fight the cycle. Maybe you'll escape the loop. Or maybe you'll just open the jar again. And that's the cruel punchline, isn't it? You've listened to gods and monsters, to punishments that never end, to love that crumbles like ash in your hands. And after all that noise, all that chaos, you see the pattern. Nothing ever really changes. Power shifts, masks get swapped, but the cycle keeps chewing through people just like you. Titans fall, CEOs rise, kings die, empires collapse, and the wheel turns with or without your consent. You thought myths were old stories carved in stone, but they've been breathing down your neck this whole time, whispering through headlines, glowing through screens, echoing in the way we still chase power and punish curiosity. The gods never left. They just learned how to code. And here you are, staring into the dark, wondering if maybe you've been inside the labyrinth all along. Every door you open leads to another corridor. Every promise of freedom is just a new kind of leash. That's the secret the myths tried to tell you. It's not about escaping. It's about recognizing the walls. So you pull the blanket higher, your breath steadying as the cycle hums on without you. Somewhere out there, Zeus scrolls his feed, Pandora checks her inbox, and the Minotaur waits for your next step. But for tonight, you can let it all fade. The wheel will spin again tomorrow. For now, good night.